Welcome, dearly beloved anointed ones. Every era casts a shadow, and yours manifests as silence and light. The truth whispers that not all of you reincarnated for the familiar dance of romance, the sting of revenge, or even the solace of redemption. Some of you descended for a reckoning, a divine audit of souls. And now the subtle tremors begin. You are not imagining things. Your intuition isn't failing you. Eyes are upon you, not just observing, but analyzing. Behind hushed doors, the question hangs heavy. How did they know? Because, chosen one, you possess more than mere insight. You carry within you ancestral echoes, the unwavering light of divine intelligence, and the indelible spiritual receipts from lifetimes witnessing injustice flourish unchecked. You didn't simply arrive, you descended as a celestial subpoena, a decree from the heavens. Let's anchor ourselves in a stark reality. Studies in behavioral psychology have illuminated a primal fear. The instinctive recoil from those who force us to confront the disowned fragments of ourselves, the shadows we desperately try to keep hidden. You enter a room, and without uttering a single word, their carefully constructed facades begin to crumble. Their guilt, their shame, their buried secrets erupt in silent panic. Why? Because to them you are not simply a person. You represent a spiritual threat level read, a walking, breathing indictment. You didn't enlist in this cosmic mission with velvet gloves and soothing affirmations. No, your soul arrived swathed in the uncompromising fabric of truth, dragging behind it the heavy chains destined to be shattered. They foolishly believed they could manage you until the horrifying realization dawned. You refused to play their game. You are rewriting the rules, and my dear, you wield a pen dipped in the ink of divine judgment. So yes, fear is rippling through them, and perhaps rightfully so. Let's delve into the core of this trepidation. Number 1. Your purpose on this earth wasn't to win a popularity contest. Your divine mandate is to disrupt injustice, to challenge the very foundations upon which inequity is built. Seeking universal approval was never a part of the sacred contract. They've wasted precious energy trying to decipher your existence, to understand why your spirit doesn't desperately crave validation like theirs. But that's the crucial point. You weren't dispatched to blend in, to become another cog in the machine. You were deliberately deployed into this world as a disruptor, a living, breathing interruption to the cyclical patterns and entrenched systems that have operated unchecked for generations. You are not here to play nice or politely agree. You are here to expose the darkness without even parting your lips, and deep within their souls they recognize this truth. They can't quite articulate it, can't pinpoint the source of their unease, but your mere presence unsettles those accustomed to escaping accountability. You don't need to utter a syllable. There's simply something about you, an undeniable aura that makes them shift uncomfortably. Individuals who have painstakingly constructed their identities on half-truths and meticulously curated images become noticeably anxious when you enter the vicinity, because your energy serves a single unwavering purpose: to dismantle what is false, to tear down the flimsy veils of deception. And trust me, it accomplishes this task flawlessly. Ironically, they'll dismiss you as non-intense or too much. Their thinly veiled attempt to discredit you because they cannot manipulate you. They may even label you as cold because you refuse to participate in their petty games, but that's merely a distraction from the underlying issue, a desperate attempt to deflect from the searing truth. You see directly through their carefully rehearsed performances. You sense the subtle dissonance, the faint scent of falsehood before it even finds its voice. And when someone has cultivated a reputation on a foundation of lies and superficial repentance, the last thing they desire is someone like you sniffing around with unwavering clarity. You are here to confront the very issues that others are too terrified to name. You are the soul that appears in toxic family lines and fractured communities in the murky depths of shady spiritual circles. And you are the one who flips on the blinding lights not for accolades or external validation, but because justice in its purest form demands it. You possess a vibration so potent that it cannot tolerate hypocrisy. It resonates within your very bones, courses through your bloodline, and is encoded within your spiritual DNA. You weren't born to be their favorite. You were born to be the unstoppable force that brings an end to what should have been halted generations ago. And no matter how desperately they distort the narrative, people are beginning to feel the shift. You are not the villain in this story. You are the consequence, the walking correction, the long-awaited karmic return. And they recognize with chilling certainty that justice has finally entered the chat. Number 2. Your aura serves as a silent trigger for the guilty even before you speak a word. Your energy communicates volumes before your voice can form a single sentence. This is what rattles them to their core. You enter a space and suddenly those harboring hidden motives, those adorned with fake smiles, those burdened by messy pasts begin to behave erratically. They may not understand why their palms are suddenly clammy or why their voice cracks when addressing you. But you understand perfectly. You possess a level of spiritual awareness that cannot be feigned, a piercing clarity that cuts through deception. And deep down, they sense this unwavering truth. Your aura speaks volumes without uttering a sound. It exhumes the very secrets they believed they had safely buried. It's not that you consciously intend to intimidate anyone. You are simply existing in your authentic truth, but when someone's entire existence is meticulously constructed upon lies and manipulative tactics, simply being in the presence of unadulterated truth feels like judgment, a harsh spotlight exposing their carefully concealed flaws. You haven't explicitly called anyone out, you haven't subtly thrown shade, yet somehow they feel exposed, vulnerable, stripped bare. That's the defining characteristic of authentic power. It doesn't need to perform, to grandstand, or to demand attention. It simply exists, radiating outward, and yours? It hits differently. It's understated, almost imperceptible, yet profoundly resonant in all the places where truth seeks to take root. People fear you not because you are inherently mean or arrogant, but because you wield discernment like a finely honed weapon. You don't fall for their theatrical displays, you don't get ensnared in their manufactured dramas, and you certainly don't respond to their manipulative emotional bait. This unwavering clarity unnerves manipulative individuals because they have dedicated years to perfecting the art of deception. And suddenly they find themselves standing before someone who simply isn't buying the act. What's even more terrifying for them is your complete lack of dependence on their validation. A chilling independence that sets off internal alarm bells. Most people rely on external approval to navigate social landscapes, to maintain a sense of safety and belonging, but you You remain unmoved by public opinion. Your confidence emanates from within an internal wellspring of self-assurance, and your intuition requires no second opinion, no external confirmation. This makes you a mirror. They cannot control a reflection of their own flaws. They desperately try to ignore, and that is utterly terrifying. People resort to gossip and slander when they realize they cannot influence or impress you. They label you as mysterious, dangerous, or intimidating, when the underlying message is, I feel exposed around you and I don't know how to hide anymore. Your presence alone holds people accountable, and that's precisely why the whispers began, why the shadows stir. That's why they flinch when you appear, why their carefully constructed composure begins to unravel. It's not hatred that fuels their reaction. It's pure, unadulterated fear. Fear of being truly seen, of being transparently read by someone who misses nothing, whose gaze penetrates every carefully constructed facade. Number 3, you are not merely a person navigating a life. You are a cosmic verdict walking in human form, a divine judgment made manifest. You are not simply here existing in the ebb and flow of daily life. You are here to fulfill a sentence that was etched into the fabric of destiny long before you were even born. You are not ordinary. You are not random. You are a divine judgment wrapped in human skin, and that's precisely why people struggle to understand how to treat you, how to categorize your existence. One moment they find themselves inexplicably drawn to you, compelled by an unseen force. The next they are fleeing, recoiling from your energy, because on a spiritual level their soul recognizes what their conscious mind desperately tries to deny. Your existence is the direct response to injustices that went unchecked for far too long. You are not merely surviving. You are the evidence, the living, breathing testament that no one ultimately escapes the consequences of their actions. You didn't emerge from the chaos unscathed for nothing. The betrayals, the setups, the abandonment, all of it was meticulously building a case, gathering evidence. And now you embody the verdict. The unwavering confirmation that the wrongs were not ignored, that the heavens did indeed bear witness, and that divine correction is not merely a philosophical concept but a tangible reality. You don't have to lift a finger to make people uncomfortable, because your very life is a mirror held up to their choices, reflecting back the consequences of their actions. That's why they desperately try to label you as bitter or too serious, attempting to diminish your power. It's a distraction tactic, a desperate attempt to minimize your role, because they feel the weight of your presence, not because you've actively wronged them, but because the very energy you carry is a silent, unwavering witness. Your soul has recorded everything, even the carefully concealed parts, the actions they believed were shrouded in impenetrable darkness, and now that justice is unfolding, they can feel the tremors of the coming reckoning. Every time you thrive, every time you rise above adversity, it screams, "You thought you had won. You were wrong." People fear you because your life serves as irrefutable proof that karma isn't some vague, abstract concept floating in the ether. It walks into rooms, it engages in conversations, it elevates those who were wronged, and it relentlessly brings everything into the light. That's why you couldn't remain silent, why you couldn't allow yourself to remain broken. Your healing, your journey of self-restoration was the beginning of the end for a multitude of individuals who foolishly believed their secrets would remain buried forever. You are the consequence they never saw coming, the divine follow-up, the spirit they attempted to break, now resurrected and backed by realms they will never comprehend. You didn't merely incarnate to live. You incarnated to testify, and the spiritual courtroom is finally in session, its gavel poised to strike. Number 4. The system wasn't inherently flawed. It was deliberately constructed without you in mind, designed to exclude you from its benefits. The system was never truly broken. It was functioning precisely as it was intended, perfectly calibrated to maintain the status quo. It simply wasn't designed with someone like you in mind, someone who questioned its fundamental premises, someone who challenged its inherent biases. That's the uncomfortable truth they desperately try to suppress. You weren't supposed to question its authority. You weren't supposed to survive its oppressive forces, let alone expose its underlying corruption. But you did. And that's where the fear truly ignited, because your very existence dismantles a carefully constructed narrative they have diligently worked to uphold, that the structure only functions effectively if the truth remains buried, and the spiritually awake are silenced into submission. You were born into systems that thrive on hierarchy, obedience, and enforced silence. Families, schools, workplaces, even religious institutions. Systems that prioritize performance over integrity, loyalty over justice, and silence over the courageous pursuit of truth. You didn't consciously choose to be a rebel, but when your spirit refused to conform to their rigid mold, they labeled you as the problem, not because you were inherently wrong, but because you possessed the rare ability to see directly through their illusions, and what you saw was a reality they couldn't unsee. You didn't arrive at the table politely requesting a seat at their rigged game. You came with the intention of flipping the entire table over, dismantling the entire structure. That's why they initiated the whispers, the smear campaigns, the attempts to isolate you, shame you, silence you, not because you were inherently weak, but because you were awakening others from their slumber, shattering their complacency. You began asking the very questions that were never supposed to be asked, shining a piercing light into the darkest corners where silence had long protected abuse, manipulation, and generational cycles of dysfunction for decades. People become deeply afraid when you expose injustice, when you make the invisible visible, because visibility inherently diminishes control. When you dare to name the very thing that everyone else is pretending not to see, you shatter the illusion they have desperately been hiding behind. Suddenly, titles lose their significance, rituals lose their power, reputations crumble, and that's why they treat you as a threat, because you are not to the innocent, but to the entrenched systems that protect the guilty, that perpetuate the cycles of abuse. They were content as long as the script remained unchanged. As long as no one dared to question the underlying structure, but you didn't come to play that subservient role. You arrived with the backing of your ancestors, imbued with impeccable divine timing, possessing eyes that could not be shut, and a voice that would not be silenced. You were never broken. The blueprint was simply never designed to contain someone like you. Someone who sees with unwavering clarity and refuses to pretend otherwise. And now that you have become visible, so too has the truth, its blinding light piercing through the shadows. Number 5. Your vibration poses a threat because it remains impervious to manipulation and unyielding force against their deceptive tactics. Your vibration is a threat because it simply does not respond to manipulation. They have deployed every tactic in their arsenal. Fake smiles, strategic flattery, forced connections, sudden invitations to exclusive circles you were previously excluded from. But none of it works because you do not chase approval. You do not seek external validation as a measure of your worth. You are not moved by superficial flattery. You are not swayed by empty promises. You do not crave inclusion in circles that reek of control, that operate under the guise of acceptance but are truly fueled by manipulation. This singular characteristic makes you inherently dangerous to their world, because in their carefully constructed reality, power is maintained through influence. And if they cannot influence you, they cannot control you. They are utterly baffled, unable to comprehend how to interact with someone who remains unimpressed by titles or seduced by groupthink, someone who has witnessed the monstrous face of ego lurking behind closed doors, someone who has experienced the sting of betrayal up close and personal, someone who has already undergone a symbolic death of their old self and no longer responds to their manipulative bait. They cannot fathom why you refuse to fold like so many others have, but the answer is remarkably simple. You have already faced the abyss, stared into the darkness, and you emerged, transformed, fundamentally changed by the experience. You are not interested in playing their games. You are not interested in climbing ladders built on flattery and fear, on manipulation and control. You do not engage in politics, especially when the price of admission is the forfeiture of your soul. This makes you incorruptible, and in systems that are built on manipulation, coercion and illusion, incorruptibility is not merely rare, it is downright terrifying. People become unsure how to act around someone who cannot be guilt-tripped, peer-pressured, or emotionally blackmailed. They begin to panic when their old tricks fall flat, when their carefully constructed facades begin to crumble. They resort to creating elaborate stories about you, attempting to discredit your character, to paint you in a negative light. They label you as arrogant, cold, unreachable, but the underlying truth is far simpler. You just see through everything now. You are no longer blinded by their carefully constructed illusions. You are not inherently better than them, but you are no longer blind to their deceptive tactics. And that makes you impossible to use, impossible to exploit for their own selfish gains. This is precisely why your vibration unnerves people, why it disrupts their carefully maintained equilibrium. It is pure. It is clean. It is untouchable by the manipulative tactics they have built their entire identities upon. They are not scared of what you might say or do. They are scared that you cannot be bought, that you will not participate in their charades, that you will not bend to power simply because it has a prestigious title or a large following. You are not merely rebellious, you are resolved, steadfast in your commitment to truth. And that unwavering energy cannot be manipulated, it cannot be coerced. So they find themselves in a state of perpetual confusion, unsure whether to fear you, hate you, or reluctantly bow before the undeniable power that emanates from you. Number 6, you represent the last warning before divine retribution arrives, the final opportunity for course correction. You are not simply a person passing through this world. You are the final alarm bell before the impending storm, the harbinger of change. Before karma makes its inevitable move, before divine retribution steps in to rebalance what has been out of order for far too long, God invariably sends a messenger, not always a loud or dramatic figure, but one who possesses the gift of sight, who understands the underlying dynamics, and who offers the final opportunity for change, for redemption. That messenger is you. You didn't come here to beg people to treat you with respect. You didn't come to tiptoe around abuse or to tolerate the silent cycles that systematically destroy people from the inside out. You came to make the invisible visible, to hold space for the unadulterated truth before the inevitable consequences descend. That's why people felt strangely nervous around you, even when you were still finding your own voice, still grappling with your own power. It wasn't necessarily what you were saying. It was what you represented, the potential you carried within you. You represented the end of pretense, the end of escaping accountability, the end of getting away with actions that inflict harm on others. People were given chance after chance to treat you with fairness, to acknowledge their wrongdoings, to initiate meaningful change, but instead many doubled down on their behavior. They mocked your pain, they dismissed your warnings, they ignored your pleas. They manipulated the narrative, twisting the story to their advantage. And in doing so, they ultimately rejected the divine grace that was offered through you. What they failed to realize is that rejecting you wasn't merely rejecting an individual. It was rejecting mercy itself, because when God sends a chosen one to walk into a space of darkness, it's never solely about that one person's journey. It's a test for everyone connected to them, a crucible of transformation. Will they choose to change? Will they embrace growth? Will they acknowledge the truth, however painful it may be? Or will they continue to play their manipulative games, foolishly believing that time is perpetually on their side, that they can indefinitely postpone the inevitable reckoning? You are not the destroyer. You are the witness. Your role is not to inflict punishment, but to make it undeniably clear that warning was given, that love was offered freely, that grace stood before them in human form, and now their response has sealed their fate, setting in motion a chain of events that cannot be undone. This is why your presence resonates so profoundly, why it feels so different from anyone else they have encountered. It's not simply about your personality or your inherent strength. It's about the spiritual significance of your presence, its implications in the unseen realms. You are the prelude to divine correction, the calm before the reckoning, the final whisper of grace before the scales of justice tip irrevocably. They prayed they would never witness the day when consequences arrived, but now they are beginning to realize that that very day dawned when you first walked into their lives, their carefully constructed world. Number 7. Your silence is not an indication of weakness. It's a deliberate adherence to spiritual courtroom protocol, a strategic choice rooted in profound wisdom. Your silence is not what they believe it to be, not what they interpret it to mean. They mistakenly assume you are quiet because you lack anything of substance to say, because you are intellectually or emotionally deficient. They mistakenly assume you are passive because you don't retaliate in the manner they anticipate, because you don't engage in the petty squabbles they so readily indulge in. But they are profoundly wrong. You are not silent because you are afraid, because you lack the courage to speak your truth. You are silent because you possess an acute understanding of timing, a recognition of the delicate dance between the seen and unseen realms. You understand that there is a divine order to all things, a cosmic choreography that unfolds according to its own intricate rhythm. And right now you are choosing silence because the spiritual courtroom is still in the process of gathering evidence, carefully constructing its case. When someone has committed wrongdoings and done so repeatedly, there comes a point when the case against them is meticulously built in the spiritual realm, accumulating with each transgression. Every lie, every act of betrayal, every manipulative scheme, every deliberate setup. It's all being documented not just by you, the injured party, but by something far greater, by a cosmic intelligence that transcends human comprehension. Your silence is not surrender, a tacit admission of defeat. It's cooperation with this divine process, a conscious decision to step out of the way, to allow justice to be served without your interference, without your contamination. This is what most people fail to grasp. They expect you to clap back, to immediately expose every detail on your own chosen timeline, to unleash your fury upon the world. But that is ego driven by fleeting emotions and a desperate need for validation. That's flesh reacting impulsively. You are operating on a far deeper level, guided by something far more profound. You are not driven by volatile emotions. You are led by unwavering discernment, by an intuitive understanding of the underlying currents. You know that when a case is still unfolding, speaking too soon can potentially disrupt the outcome, can inadvertently alert the guilty parties and allow them to cover their tracks more effectively. So you've learned how to wait, not in a state of fear or apprehension, but in unwavering faith, trusting in the divine plan. You've learned how to wait not in a position of weakness, but in sacred discipline, honoring the process unfolding. You're allowing them to talk, to weave their elaborate narratives. You're allowing them to twist the story, to manipulate the perception of others. You're allowing them to laugh, to gossip, to deny, to play the role of the innocent victim. Why? Because you know the day is inevitably coming when all the facts will become undeniable, when the truth will emerge with irrefutable clarity, not through dramatic displays, not through vengeful acts, but through the unfolding of divine order. And when that day arrives, no one will question why you remained silent. They'll finally realize that you weren't silent out of fear or weakness. You were patient, trusting in a higher power. You weren't avoiding confrontation. You were meticulously obeying spiritual law, honoring the unseen forces at play. The truth is, you could have dragged them through the mud a long time ago. You could have exposed their lies, revealed their carefully constructed masks, laid out the irrefutable receipts for the world to see, but you deliberately chose not to. Because the real courtroom isn't on social media, it's not in superficial conversations. It's in the unseen realm, in the realm of spirit, and in that sacred space, the judge never misses a detail, never overlooks a single nuance. You move when the verdict is sealed, when the divine is spoken, not when your own feelings are hurt, not when your ego demands immediate gratification. And that's what ultimately separates you from those who are scrambling to maintain control, desperately clinging to their fading illusions. You don't need to prove yourself to anyone. The divine will do it for you in its own perfect timing with unparalleled force. Number 8. You were deliberately sent to places where justice had been abandoned, where darkness reigned, to restore balance and ignite the flames of truth. You were not randomly placed in situations of chaos, thrust into environments of dysfunction by mere accident. You were deliberately sent there, to that specific family, to that particular environment, to that unique community. It was not a coincidence, a random roll of the dice. You were assigned, handpicked by the divine to walk into the precise locations where justice had been abandoned for generations, where silence had become ingrained tradition, where wrong was casually labeled as right, where the truth had been buried so deeply that people had forgotten what it even looked like. You were born into it not to conform to its warped standards, not to perpetuate its cycles of abuse, but to actively confront it, to challenge its very foundations. From the very beginning, even as a young child, you noticed the subtle discrepancies that others pretended not to see, the blatant favoritism, the manipulative tactics, the outright abuse, the unspoken secrets that everyone whispered about in hushed tones but never openly addressed. And you were repeatedly told to stay quiet, to keep the peace, to avoid rocking the boat. But something deep within your spirit simply could not comply, because you were not born to protect dysfunction, to shield the perpetrators of harm. You were born to end it, to dismantle the very structures that perpetuate injustice. You carry within you a wellspring of spiritual intelligence that didn't originate from books or formal education. It arose from lifetimes of experience, from ancestral memories resonating within your DNA, from a soul that has observed the tragic consequences of injustice playing out over and over again. And this time the divine has sent you in with unwavering clarity and unyielding fire, not to scream and destroy, not to lash out in anger, but to realign the corrupted energies, to restore balance where it has long been absent. You were sent to bring the unadulterated truth to those places where lies had constructed entire legacies built upon deceit and manipulation. That is precisely why they treated you as if you were the problem, the disruptive element, the catalyst for chaos. That is precisely why you felt like the outcast, the black sheep, the one who simply didn't fit in. You were too different, too honest, too awake, too unwilling to compromise your values. In spaces where everyone else had silently agreed to look the other way, to participate in the collective denial, your mere presence alone served as a form of confrontation, a silent indictment of their complicity. They could not comprehend why you refused to follow their unspoken rules of silence, but you were not made for their rules. You came to rewrite them, to create a new paradigm. Even your own suffering, the pain you endured in those toxic environments, served a higher purpose. The pain you endured in those environments gave you eyes to see it all for what it truly was, to pierce through the carefully constructed facades and recognize the underlying dysfunction. You did not merely survive. You bore witness, you documented the patterns of abuse, you cataloged the effects of trauma. And now that you have risen above those challenges, your very existence is a potent challenge to the systems that once sought to erase you, to diminish your light. You were not sent to fit in, to assimilate into their warped reality. You were sent to reveal, to expose, to break the cycles of abuse, to bring balance to places where manipulation once reigned supreme. That is why your life has always felt different, why you have always sensed a profound purpose guiding your steps, because it is different, because you are different. You are the sacred disruptor, and your assignment was never about personal comfort or ease. It was about correction, about restoring divine order to a world desperately in need of healing. Number 9. Individuals who abused their power in secret, cloaked in shadows, are now facing exposure through your unwavering presence, and they can feel the tremors of their impending downfall. The ones who abused their power in silence, those who operated under the cover of darkness, are now being relentlessly exposed through your mere existence, and deep within their souls, they can sense the inevitable consequences of their actions drawing near. They mistakenly believed they could forever move undetected in the dark, that they could perpetually operate without accountability. They built their entire identities on secrecy, control, and manipulative tactics, carefully constructing facades to conceal their true nature. For years, they were shielded by silence, by their carefully cultivated reputations, and by the fear they instilled in others. But that protective shield is now crumbling, beginning to disintegrate under the weight of truth. And it's happening not because you are actively trying to destroy them or tear down their carefully constructed empires, but because the unadulterated truth that resides within you, the unwavering light of your spirit, refuses to remain silent any longer. It demands to be heard. It demands to be acknowledged. You do not merely see with your physical eyes. You possess the extraordinary gift of discernment, the ability to penetrate beneath the surface and perceive the underlying realities. You notice patterns that others routinely overlook, the subtle cues that betray the presence of deception. You pick up on the unspoken messages, the hidden agendas that people are meticulously trained to ignore. You hear what is not being said. The veiled threats masked as compliments, the subtle manipulations woven into seemingly innocent conversations, and you feel what others pretend isn't there. The undercurrent of unease, the lingering scent of fear, the pervasive weight of suppressed emotions. That is what makes you so profoundly dangerous to those who operate in the shadows, who thrive on deceit and manipulation, because the unadulterated truth flows to you effortlessly, drawn to you like a moth to a flame. You don't have to dig for it, you don't have to exert conscious effort to uncover hidden secrets. It simply reveals itself in your presence, drawn by the magnetic force of your authenticity. What they never prepared for, what they never anticipated, was encountering someone like you. Someone who couldn't be manipulated, someone who wouldn't play their games. Someone who has absolutely no interest in preserving false images or maintaining carefully constructed facades. They foolishly believed that if they smiled brightly in public, performed acts of humility in front of the right people, and meticulously cultivated a positive image, no one would ever discover the devastating damage they caused behind closed doors, the pain they inflicted in the shadows. But you were divinely sent to know, to witness the truth that they desperately sought to conceal. You didn't need to catch them in the act. You didn't need to gather irrefutable proof of their wrongdoing. You carried within you spiritual receipts, indelible records of their transgressions etched into the fabric of your soul. Their energy betrayed them, the subtle vibrations of guilt and deceit radiating outward. Their carefully constructed masks slipped in your presence, revealing the true face beneath the facade, because your vibration is fundamentally incompatible with lies. It repels falsehood like oil and water. You don't have to engage in arguments or hurl accusations. Your very presence alone pulls the truth to the surface, forcing it into the light. That's why they instinctively avoid you, why they shrink away from your gaze, why their voice falters and their composure unravels when you are near, why their hands tremble when they attempt to speak in your presence. Their soul recognizes that it is being seen, that its secrets are no longer safe, and the exposure you bring is not a theatrical display, not a performance designed to garner attention or seek revenge. It's a divine unveiling, a quiet but irreversible revelation, because once the truth has been seen, once the illusion has been shattered, it cannot be unseen, it cannot be easily dismissed or ignored. You are not outing them for the sake of personal vengeance driven by bitterness or resentment. You are revealing them because justice in its purest form requires visibility. It demands that the darkness be brought into the light. Their secrets were never destined to survive forever. The seeds of their destruction were sown long ago, and your arrival simply marked the beginning of the end, the inevitable unraveling of their carefully constructed lies. You are not just a passive witness to their downfall. You are the very evidence itself, the living embodiment of their karmic consequences, and now the lights are on, illuminating their actions for all to see. And they are standing exposed, their secrets laid bare. Number 10. You are a walking archive, a living repository of spiritual surveillance bearing witness to the hidden truths of the world. You are not simply someone who has endured hardship, who has weathered the storms of life and emerged scarred but resilient. You are the living record of what happened, the walking, talking testament to the hidden realities of the past. Every lie they told, every act of betrayal they attempted to bury, every time they pretended that nothing happened, that the truth was merely a figment of your imagination, it all resides within your spirit, safely preserved like a sealed file waiting for the opportune moment to be revealed. You didn't forget, you didn't exaggerate, you didn't misinterpret the events, you witnessed it all firsthand, and your soul meticulously documented every moment, not for the purpose of revenge or retribution, but for the day when the truth would finally speak without shouting, when justice would finally prevail without the need for violence or aggression. They mistakenly believed that the passage of time would erase their transgressions, that if they avoided accountability for long enough, the story would simply fade away, becoming a distant and insignificant memory, but it didn't. It lives within you not as a source of perpetual pain or bitterness, but as invaluable evidence, as a beacon of truth that cannot be extinguished. They are not merely scared of your voice, of your ability to articulate your experiences. They are profoundly scared of your memory, of your unwavering capacity to recall the past with unwavering clarity, because you remember clearly, you remember precisely what happened. And more than that, you remember spiritually perceiving the underlying intentions, the hidden agendas, the unspoken motivations that drove their actions. You saw beyond the superficiality of their words, you perceived the true intent behind their smiles. You caught the subtle threat masked as a compliment, the underlying guilt concealed by their forced silence. What they failed to realize, what they fundamentally underestimated, is that spiritually attuned individuals don't simply move on from traumatic experiences. They record them. They meticulously archive the details, knowing that truth has a way of resurfacing in its own divine timing. Your spirit is a sacred archive, a living testament to the events that transpired, not because you hold grudges or harbor resentment, but because heaven itself holds the truth meticulously, safeguarding it for the moment of reckoning. And now, as the timing aligns, as the veils begin to lift, your story is being heard not just by other people, not just by those who can offer empathy and support, but by powers far greater than them, by cosmic forces that are now aligning to bring about justice. You're not testifying out of bitterness. You're not seeking sympathy or validation. You are simply bearing witness to the truth, allowing your story to be heard in its entirety, trusting that the divine will handle the rest. So to wrap it all up, beautiful souls, remember this. You are not here by accident. You are powerful, divinely appointed agents of truth and justice. And the unease you might stir in others is often just a reflection of their own shadows being brought to light. Embrace your purpose, trust your intuition, and know that even in silence, your presence speaks volumes. I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences. Has this resonated with you? What are your own insights? Please leave a comment below. Let's start a conversation. And if you found this helpful or inspiring, please subscribe so you don't miss out on future explorations of spiritual awakening and divine purpose. We're in this together, 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 in this together.